So you realized you're a highly sensitive person, and that's why you've always struggled with your job. Or maybe you're just tired of feeling like your job is sucking the soul out of you. That's how it was for me, at least. Finding the right kind of job can be extra tricky for an HSP. We tend to look for deeper meaning in everything we do, and this includes our job. But we also need a job that's not too emotionally or mentally draining. This is why we often struggle more in our jobs than the non-HSP, or why we go through many jobs before finding the right one. I will share my experience with looking for a job that checked all the boxes for me, and how I coped, or not, with jobs that were less ideal. I've had low-key office jobs and high-stress TV studio jobs, and even waitressing jobs. But is there such a thing as the perfect job for an HSP? I think that many of us HSPs have learned to blend in with the non-HSPs at work, often taking on more stimulation than we can handle and working twice as hard to reach the same results. Once I realized and accepted that I would never be like the non-HSP, that's when I could begin to thrive at work. Because that's when you can begin to discern which tasks and jobs are better suited for you. For me, choosing a career wasn't difficult because I always knew that I wanted to be an actress. What was difficult, however, was discovering that my high level of self-awareness, something that most HSPs are really good at, makes it hard to be in the moment and let the character come to life. Because I'm distracted by the stage lights, the camera in my face, the tech crew standing around, shuffling, breathing, the cold air that I have to pretend is midsummer heat. So even though I absolutely love the craft of acting, it takes me a lot of effort to get into my role and stay in the moment. Same goes for an open plan workspace. All the surrounding chatter and phones ringing will prevent the HSP from focusing on the work in front of them. I worked at a call center at my university, and while stepping outside my introverted comfort zone to place call after call for hours was taxing, it was the bright overhead lights in the room that eventually made me quit in less than 2 weeks. Nothing about that job was tolerable to me. I also despised having to ask people for money because it felt so disingenuous, and I suspect all HSPs have a strong propensity towards honesty. So if you are unhappily at an office job, let's look at some of the things you could do to make it more tolerable. Don't be afraid to ask for accommodations, like a separate workspace or maybe a different shift. Communicate your strengths and weaknesses. Let the office know that you do not appreciate frequent interruptions and that you work more efficiently without them. Let's talk about people jobs. Restaurant work or waitering. Waiting tables takes a lot of social skills. For an introverted, highly sensitive soul, being social and outgoing are very tiring. So when I worked at a cafe, I had to confront this. My first job as a server was at age 16. At that point, I was so reserved that the manager had advised me that maybe I should take a shot of alcohol to loosen up a bit on the job. Well, I never returned to that job. My second waitressing job was after university, and this is probably where my acting training came in handy. I would just put on an outgoing persona. This was a way to preserve my authentic self and my energy. There still wasn't much left of me at the end of the day, but at least I did the job well. My favorite days were when I was on coffee duty, and I would just be making coffees and latte art all day long, not having to tend to people so much. I stuck with that job for a year, and I had chosen it specifically because I wanted to work on my social skills. It was like a year of inner work and growth. Before that, I had a TV studio job, which was great because most of the work consisted of me hiding behind a camera or a computer in small rooms with very few people. The only challenging part was doing live shows because that's a lot of high stress. But the HSP's focus and attention to detail can be great assets for a job like that. I lasted about a year until I decided it was time to move on. Eventually, the daily time pressure got to me, but I also simply got bored of doing the same things again and again. Maybe that's where my high sensation-seeking thirst for novelty comes into play. If you don't know whether you might be a high sensation seeker, feel free to watch my video on that after this one. An even more extreme people job was teaching high school kids. The only reason I lasted at that job for 3 years was because it was part-time, just a couple of hours per week. While it was one of the most rewarding jobs I've ever had, it was also the most draining. On the days that I was teaching, I would take the rest of the day off from my other work endeavors because there was just nothing left in me. The highly sensitive empath in me made it easy to connect with the students, and this can be particularly important when teaching a subject like theater. But it also meant that I could pick up on all the students' qualms and distress, and I would carry that with me the rest of the day. I eventually ended up leaving because I wanted to focus more on my other pursuits. But I don't think that it's something that would have worked out for me long term anyway, because of how much it drained me. Let's look at one more example. Working as a first assistant director for short films. For this job, you're dealing with a lot of phone calls, organizing, scheduling, and troubleshooting. So as an HSP, it's a job we're very skilled at as far as the planning part goes. But for an introvert, this job will take its toll. That's why I'm grateful that these kinds of shoots are only for short periods of time. At the end of a shooting day, I'd end up with a migraine and my personal life would be completely neglected because there just wasn't anything left of me after those 12-hour workdays. The good news is that as humans, we adapt well to situations. So once you get in the habit of certain activities, the threshold lowers. Basically, you build a sense of tolerance over time. Of course, this threshold varies from person to person. Eventually, I discovered that in order to thrive, I just needed to do my own thing. And that's when I began my wood art business. I get to be creative, make my own hours, be my own boss, and deal with very few people. And the only ones interrupting me while I'm working are the mosquitoes. I even get to spend a lot of time in my mind philosophizing. I mean, what more could you ask for? Of course, I still love acting, and I do that every chance I get. But where I live, on Curacao, there just aren't many acting opportunities. Sometimes you have the luxury of choosing your job, but I know not everyone has that flexibility. And then you just try to make the best of things. Hopefully you will have picked up some helpful tools from this video on how to make your current job more tolerable. Having a healthy, balanced life will also help towards that goal, like getting enough rest and recharge time outside of work, and having a balanced diet and exercise routine. What's your experience with the job hunt? Have you also struggled a lot, or have you found your ideal job, and what makes it work so well for you? Leave your tips in the comments. Thanks for watching, and feel free to subscribe for more highly sensitive person insights. And also, do something today that scares you. Until the next one, ayo! I have no teleprompter hidden between this stack of paper. Tolerable.